How does a city survive for more than a century by refusing to appear on the map? What kind of evidence can lead archaeologists through rainforest to a place last described in 1695? And what did the Spanish really find when they reached the land of the White Jaguar? In the Lacandon rainforest of Chiapas, Mexico, a name survived longer than the city it described: Sak-Bahlan, the land of the White Jaguar. For more than 3 centuries it lived in colonial letters, indigenous memory, failed searches, and the uneasy blank spaces of old maps. This was not a ceremonial centre abandoned in the classic Maya collapse. It was a rebel city of the colonial age, founded by people who knew exactly what Spanish rule meant and chose the forest over submission. Its story begins after conquest, not before it. Recently, archaeologists working from historical documents, geographic modelling, and field survey reported that they had relocated the likely site. The discovery matters because Sak-Bahlan was not merely lost, it had once been hidden with intention. The people behind Sak-Bahlan were the historical Lacandon Ch'olti Maya, not to be confused simply with every modern community called Lacandon today. They occupied a difficult world of rivers, limestone, forest paths, alliances, raids, trade, and war. Their earlier capital was Lacandon, the Great Rock, associated with the landscape around Laguna Miramar. In 1586, Spanish forces took it. For many peoples, that would be the end of the political story. Here, it became the beginning of another one. Survivors withdrew deeper into the rainforest and built a new capital beyond easy reach. Sak-Bahlan became a refuge, a command centre, and a statement. Conquest could occupy a place, but it could not automatically occupy a people. For about 110 years after the fall of Lacandon, the community remained outside stable Spanish control. That makes Sak-Bahlan one of the last great holdouts of Maya resistance in Chiapas, a living rebuke to the idea that conquest was quick or complete. Sak-Bahlan survived because geography was part of its defence. The Lacandon rainforest is not empty green space. It is heat, insects, flooded ground, sudden rivers, broken limestone, hidden paths, and distances that stretch when a person is carrying supplies. Spanish soldiers could march, but marching was not the same as ruling. A road could be cut, then swallowed. A village could be entered, then emptied. The forest gave the rebels something empires hate: uncertainty. The city was not isolated from the world. Rebel communities traded, negotiated, watched, and struck when it served them. They understood the colonial frontier as a moving system, and they learned how to live in its blind spots. That is why Sak-Bahlan is so compelling. It was not a lost city in the romantic sense of people forgetting how to find it. It was a city whose location was political knowledge, protected because knowing the way could decide who lived free. By the 1690s, Spanish pressure intensified across the region. Missionaries, soldiers, and colonial authorities wanted the last independent communities brought under royal and religious authority. The forest frontier, long marked as dangerous, became a target. In 1695, Spanish expeditions finally reached Sak-Bahlan. Colonial accounts describe a settlement on a plain near a bend of the Lacandon River. That detail, written in the language of conquest, would later become one of archaeology's clues. The Spanish renamed the place Nuestra Señora de los Dolores del Lacandon. Renaming was never a small act. It was a claim that the old world had ended, that a rebel capital could be turned into a colonial settlement by words, crosses, and force. But even that victory proved unstable. The colonial settlement did not become a lasting city. In time, it was abandoned, and the jungle resumed its work. The Spanish had found Sak-Bahlan, but they did not preserve its certainty. After abandonment, Sak-Bahlan became a problem of memory. There were names in documents, distances in testimony, river descriptions, missionary routes, and fragments of geography. None of them were enough by themselves. Researchers had searched before. Some hypotheses placed the city elsewhere. Some expeditions came away with uncertainty. The rainforest punished confidence, and the colonial archive preserved directions in a world where rivers shift and landmarks change names. The rediscovery depended on treating old text as data, but not as perfect data. A letter from 1695, colonial travel descriptions, river positions, likely travel speeds, and terrain constraints had to be read together. This is where modern archaeology becomes patient rather than spectacular. The breakthrough was not one shining artifact, it was a convergence: historical document analysis, geographic information systems, predictive modelling, and survey on the ground. The recent project involved archaeologists and researchers connected with Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History, along with international collaborators. Josue Lozada Toledo's modelling helped narrow a search that had frustrated others for decades. The model pointed toward terrain in the Monte Azules Biosphere Reserve within the wider Lacandon jungle. The place matched the logic of the documents: near river movement, difficult to reach, and consistent with a settlement hidden in plain ecological complexity. Then came the less romantic part: fieldwork. Survey means heat, mud, measuring, checking, clearing sight lines, comparing what the model predicted with what the ground actually held. In archaeology, a map is a question. The forest answers slowly. The team found archaeological evidence consistent with a Maya settlement and with the colonial descriptions that had guided the search. The careful wording matters. This is not fantasy certainty. It is a historically grounded identification, built from converging evidence. Sak-Bahlan's value is not only that it can be placed on a map. Its remains may show how a rebel capital organised daily life under pressure, where people cooked, gathered, defended, worshipped, stored food, and managed fear. The most important finds may be ordinary: ceramics, floors, terraces, pathways, house platforms, traces of food preparation. These are the materials that return rebels to human scale. Resistance was not an abstract banner. It was breakfast, repair, childbirth, grief, and planning. The city also complicates the word conquest. In schoolbook timelines, conquest often looks like a date. Sak-Bahlan shows it as a long struggle over movement, labour, belief, land, and memory, continuing long after a capital was said to have fallen. That is why the rediscovery feels larger than a headline. A place once described by conquerors can now be studied as the home of people making hard choices inside an empire's reach, but not entirely inside its control. Before us, there were people who understood that survival sometimes required disappearance. Not disappearance from life, but from the systems built to count, tax, convert, relocate, and command. Sak-Bahlan was hidden because visibility could be dangerous. The land of the White Jaguar asks us to rethink what a lost city is. Sometimes a city is lost because its builders are gone, sometimes because the forest is vast, and sometimes because people made a refuge so effective that history had to work to find it again. Now Sak-Bahlan returns, not as a treasure chest, but as a correction. The last holdouts of Chiapas were not a footnote to conquest. They were authors of another map, one drawn through rivers, forest, memory, refusal, and the long human wish to remain free.